we start service. So I have a tips that I read in a magazine. And these were 5 tips for heterosexual women for a good relationship. So I thought, this is great, peaking. I think they were for a little younger, but number 1 was look for a kind and funny man. Second was find a man who can economically contribute and is a hard worker. 3 was look for a man that's going to be a good father and nurturing. And 4 was look for a man that likes to go out and have fun and travel. And tip 5 was make sure the 4 men don't know each other. So happy Mother's Day. Whether you nurture, whether your baby is a fur baby, whether you're a new mom, you're an older mom. Oh, look at all the wonderful people joining us on Zoom. Hello to all of you too. Today is about rebirth. It's about newness. And we're going to be talking about moving into collaboration with darkness. Moving into a relationship with darkness. And this sounds kind of creepy, I know. It's not going to be one of those scary movie talks, and it's not going to be a real downer, because honestly, the subject matter can sound like that, because we're taught to be scared of the dark, aren't we? We're taught that as little ones, we're scared of the dark, we don't want the lights off. Even some adults, not so crazy about dark shadows. But when we make friends with darkness, when we understand that it isn't the opposite of light, that it's a continuum, and that you need to have one you need to have one in order to have the other. And they work in this beautiful flow. So today I'd like to talk to you about unlearning your fear of darkness. Can everybody hear me okay? As we said, we haven't been using this in a while. Yeah. So, we've likened darkness to evil. And yet, all of us began in darkness. All of us. In fluid, in darkness, and then we came into the light. But we felt safe and nurtured, just like a seed does in the ground. We did a meditation in class last week about being a seed that's planted in the warm soil and the heat of the sun on it and the watering. And then that need to expand when the seed swells and it has to burst forth and come up through the soil. But it needs that time in darkness. It needs that time in gestation in order to get the energy and the strength to move through and into the light and do all the wonderful creative things we want to do. For a flower, it would be to bloom. For grains, it's to produce grains for food. For us, it's taking those ideas we have, all those wonderful things that we're thinking about late at night in bed. Hopefully we're not worrying, but we're actually thinking about things we get to do. Those little seeds we plant, like I'd maybe like to go to Greece, or I'd maybe like to plant bluebells in my garden this year, or I'd like to put out a different bird seed to attract a different type of bird, whatever it is, no matter how small, no matter how big. It may be a painting you want to do, it might be a new job you want to go for. All of those have to start in the quiet and the darkness inside our minds. And those are all when we're in line with Spirit, that it happens in this beautiful flow. As long as we don't throw things in to stop it from manifesting.
Sorry, but they're not being picked up by, they can't hear you on Zoom.
They can't hear me on
Can
Zoom?
you move that microphone closer to you?
You know, it's not on. Oh, you turned it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you can talk to the both.
All right, well, there's the lesson learned. Yeah, I'll just get rid of this one. Just turn down 15. Oh, well. The learning continues. So we'll just embrace the darkness that I'm in this morning. All our electronics went, and anyway, all good. I'll get back to where I was. So in our principle, we know that God is in everything. The universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is in absolutely everything. So it is in the darkness as much as it is in the light. So what is the purpose of the darkness? It is to allow us that time of gestation going within, just like we do in meditation and visioning. It's going into that quiet place, that silence, where we can get clarity on what we want in our lives. We can get clarity on what our intentions are, what we want to manifest. And when we're in that darkness and we're thinking about it, we're like, yeah, I want to go to Greece, but I don't want to go to the mainland. I want to go to an island, and I want to go to this island, and I want to have this experience. All of that is done in the darkness, quietness of our mind. And then we get to expand on it and bring it into manifestation. We get to play with it. We get to see what's happening. We get to see, is the money coming into my travel account? Do other people want to go with me? All the things are moving in the continuum from darkness into light. It is a beautiful, beautiful process. I am getting a little bit of feedback. I think I didn't shut this off. My apologies. Okay. I shut it off. Thank you. So, the darkness can show up, show us the way home when we're lost, just as light can, if we but trust and surrender to its magnificence. So when we go into that darkness, different things happen. And one thing I love to do, anybody here like to go and watch any of the astrological things that are happening out there? Yeah, Barb. I love to go out and look at comets. For some reason, comets here have to happen at 3 a.m. in the morning, so I have to coerce my husband into coming with me, driving somewhere out of town where we could try to get away from lights. And then you sit there. And I remember the first time we went, and I'm like, I don't see anything. Like, I don't see stars, I don't see comets. And then they were saying, I put on my phone to see if it was all right, like if it was in the right place, and it said, you have to be in the darkness for 15 minutes minimum, no light, including the phone that I just turned on, in order for the eyes to open to be able to see the skies. So it takes that long for the human eye to open to allow these small pinpoints of light in. And I thought, what a magnificent analogy. Right? We have to take the time with the darkness in order to see the light. We have to play with those things that are not so clear to us and stay with it and keep an open mind and keep an open eye until they come into focus, and then we get to see them. And they're miraculous. I mean, if you've ever seen the comet display and they're on a prairie sky, even at 3 in the morning, it is breathtaking. It makes you feel that you're part of something, which we are, that is truly magnificent and infinite. And instead of feeling small, I always feel like I'm part of something so much better. So darkness can be in this way of getting ideas, of setting intentions, of getting clear on manifesting a life we want, and it can also be for finding out those things within ourselves that we might consider a darkness. Maybe it's a negative thought we hold. Maybe it's a preference for something that we think other people wouldn't approve of. Maybe it's who we love. Maybe it's how we move through this world. Maybe if someone knew we had a really big foot fetish, they wouldn't want to talk to us. But the thing about those things is that they're never as much of a problem for others as they really are for ourselves. And sometimes when we take those opportunities to look at those negative thoughts we hold about ourselves, we have an opportunity to bring them into the light. Because if we don't, all those things that I mentioned before, the trips or the new things you might want to create, or maybe a new car, whatever it may be, they get held up because of these thoughts that are running around in our subconscious. They're like little roadblocks for spirit. The universe cannot flow through if we're holding negative thoughts about things we want. Example, you want to go on a trip. You're planning your trip. Meanwhile, your subconscious is thinking, you're never getting money for a trip. You plan these trips all the time, you never go anywhere. Who's going to go with you on the trip? If you go on the trip, probably a volcano is going to go off or something's going to happen. You might not even be aware of these thoughts because they're in the darkness, right? They're swirling around inside your subconscious. But we know it because we have a feeling. When we state, I'm going on this trip, we maybe have a little feeling in our stomach, like, or we might have a thought that this isn't going to happen. That is an opportunity right there, and then to practice a spiritual practice of affirmations. And affirmations is not about convincing the universe that you deserve this trip, because the universe has already said yes. The universe has packed your bags. The universe is already frolicking on that beach in Greece, waiting on you, wondering why you're not there. You've got to, when you get that feeling, switch the affirmation and convince yourself. It's only yourself that gets in the way of this. Only your thoughts that work against your intention that stop the universe from flowing. It has no idea about this. This is completely our subconscious. So why do we create these things? We were taught them. We were taught about lack. We were taught by our parents who didn't want us to be disappointed by having expectations that were never met because they had expectations that weren't met. So they tell you things like, oh, don't dream too big, or the higher you climb, the further you fall. We've all heard of those. In fact, the sign outside is a reverse on one of those thoughts. What's the number one thing they'll say? Well, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? We've got to start retraining these dark thoughts that have been taught to us. Same thing with our opinion about other people. There's a political strategy, and it's working quite well right now, and that is to have us all turn away from our idea of oneness, that we're all one. Spirit is in every single person in this room, and on Zoom, and in this city, and in this world. Every person is a divine being. Whether we agree with their politics, whether we agree with their music, whether we agree with their sports team, whatever it is, they're all divine, we're all the same. We all have that universal energy flowing through us. But there is a darkness that is planted by saying someone is other. And we see it all the time. Oh, they're this, they believe that. They're rednecks, we don't believe in them. Oh, they're liberal, they're woke. They're part of that woke group. And it's perpetuated. It's getting into absolutely everything. And the best way to fight that darkness is to bring light to it. Challenge our own thoughts. If we see someone and we start to judge them, challenge ourselves. Why am I thinking that person is different than me? Why do I think they don't love just like I love? Why do I think they're not hard workers? Because the way they're dressed. Why do I assume things? Challenge yourself. Because every time you challenge yourself, you challenge the darkness. And you make friends with it, and you play with it, and you mold it, and you turn it into something different, and you grow. One thing that's wonderful for that is travel. Because once you get into other cultures, you meet other people, you sit down at a table and you eat with them, you realize no one's different. We're all the same, we all want the same things. Moms all want their kids to grow up and have a beautiful life. Everywhere, it is no different. And yet, that darkness makes us judge. That darkness makes us put them in a room and close the door and say, no, they're not the same. So when we make friends with the unknown, when we make friends with people might have a different culture or a different way of working at the world, we're bringing light. We're making friends with the unknown, and we're bringing it into something that we know of. So turn fear into reverence. So this is, take those things that you're scared of and turn them into something you could possibly love. Find something you can love about anyone. If your first thought of looking at someone is judgment, take a moment and stop and think, why? Why am I going there? Are they really, do they breathe? Do they walk? Do they not walk? What is the difference? And make friends with that. There's, every time I go to New York, I had the opportunity to go to the Met Museum, Metropolitan Museum of Art. And up in the Impressionist gallery, there is a painting by Theodore Rousseau, French painter. This painting is literally, I think, the size of the stage opening. And this painting you come up to, and it's called A Forest in the Winter scene. And it is dark. It is black with a tinge of orange. So you've got to imagine October evening in the woods just before the sun slips behind the horizon. You know, that wonderful just last glow where you can sort of make out the outlines of the trees. I sit at that painting for at least a half an hour every time I go, because every time I do, it's just like the stars. I have to let my eyes adjust to the shadows. And when I do, all of these things start to appear from the bottom where it's the darkest. And I've been there 3 times before I noticed 2 peasants in the bottom of the painting collecting wood. And it was like I'd never seen the painting before. And he spent, in fact, his life work on this painting and had 2 people finish it for him when he passed. And what is so beautiful about this is this painting would have nothing if it wasn't for the darkness and the shadows. It wouldn't have its beauty. And artists know that when you want to create a painting and have a pinpoint of light, sort of like those winter scenes where they have the one glowing window, or a very dark scene where there's one candle and it reflects on the person's face, the trick to that is not in making the light brighter. It's in making everything around it darker. So the darkness is what creates beauty. It's what brings it forth. But you have to understand it and use it. So there's a wonderful quote that, if I can bring it up here. We learn to embrace the dark, feel more comfortable, and welcome it into the world. And that is not my quote. But anyway, we do that. We can focus on good coming from dark instead of the opposite. The quote is, well, maybe I didn't bring it over. Oh, yes, here it is. Leave the door open for the unknown, the door into the dark. There's where the most important things come from, when you yourself came from, and where you will go. And that's by Rebecca Sonnet, A Field Guide to Getting Lost. So just as I mentioned at the beginning that we all started in the dark, and we all return, and that is probably why for a lot of us it holds this fear. But what is it really? It's just the unknown. And what do human beings really dislike a lot? It's the unknown, right? We scan our horizons looking for trouble. We sit in bed and we worry about things that have happened, may happen, are never going to happen. But why do we do it? Fear, yeah. And what are we trying to do with this fear? Be safe. We're trying to stop things from happening. But what if we made friends with the unknown? What if we made friends with the mystery of life? What if we looked at something sort of like I am this service today and saying, okay, so not in control. there's something else happening completely here. But what is the mystery? What do I get to learn? What gets to unfold? And life can be really, really amazing if you can look at things like this. If you look at your children or your family and they may be headed off to do something maybe you don't think is a great idea. But stop and think, what might happen for them? What might unfold? What might they learn? What might they experience? And let them go. Enjoy watching this unfold with them. Enjoy watching what was once a fear unfold into a joy. What I'm loving, I don't know if anybody else watches Ted Lasso, but what I love about this show is it turns things that we don't even know we're conditioned for to happen in shows. Where if somebody has any type of issue, mental, physical, or whatever, from my days, at least, bullying was always a very common thing that would come up in shows. They'd be made fun of. And what I love what's happening now in shows is that it's not. So it's our expectation of something bad happening, and it doesn't. Something lovely happens, something joyful, something kind. And it's only because of my fear that that moment comes for me. And then I think, I've been doing this work for a really long time. How come I'm still surprised when people are nice? How come I'm still surprised when people do kind things? Especially on shows, because they are dramas. But in our own lives too, right? I mean, people are incredibly kind. They do amazing things every day. I've witnessed it. So my need to control, my need to feel like I'm in somewhat control of what's happening in my life, I'm looking for those fears. I'm looking for those troubles. But what if I let them go and just say, okay, Spirit, you've obviously got a really different plan for me today. Let's go. I'm on this ride. I know you got it. Because I do nothing. And if we learned anything in this teaching, is that we don't do anything. We're just along for the ride, and we try and get out of our own way by taking care of these fears, taking care of these worries, just letting them go and knowing that Spirit has us. So what would you do? What would you do today if you knew you could not fail? If you knew in your bones you could not fail? Would you book that trip? Would you speak to that person that you've been interested in? Would you plant these flowers that you've always dreamed of that everybody says are too exotic to grow in your garden? What would you do? Go do it. Make friends with the unknown, make friends with the fear, make friends with the fact you might fall flat on your face, but you're going to learn, and you're going to be better for it, and you're not going to be as scared the next time, and that fear won't show up, at least not as strong. And that's what we're here for. We're here to play with our intentions, our ideas, and we're here to manifest the life of our dreams. You were given life. All of us were given life by a mom. The dream was for us to have a life of fulfillment. Life is always expanding. Life is always moving forward. Spirit is always saying yes. So go out and do it. And I want to hear all about it. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Sunday. Take care of those fears. And so it is.